rivalry. Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. This time at Highmark Stadium. Highmark Stadium is shut down again because it just doesn't stop snowing in Western New York all of a sudden. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone Podcast as we get you ready for the divisional round.
And I'm Jon Scott in the midst of my playoff It's Sub-Zero Temperatures beard. For those watching on YouTube, I'm going to hide the few little gray scraggly guys.
That's still pretty solid, John, I got to admit.
It is, but, you know, some of us actually have to stand outside to do our job covering this football team.
Been there, done that.
And so I'm supplementing the lack of hair on the top of my head by putting some more of it on my cheeks.
Overcompensating after 10 years here, John. Happy anniversary. We'll get to that in a little bit. 10 years working alongside me at Spectrum News 1. I don't even know. Was it Y&N when you started here?
So my very first contract said Y&N, but I actually never worked when the company was Y&N. That was changed over, I believe, like the end of 2013 into 14. So then I actually had to sign a new contract with Time Warner Cable News as the header. And then it was Spectrum News, and it was Spectrum News 1, and God only knows where it's going to go from here.
Well, we'll get to that towards the end. I think what people want to talk about and hear about is the big setup for the big game at Highmark Stadium coming up. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen has had the Chiefs' number during the regular season. Just can't get past Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Andy Reid, Sean McDermott going up against his former head coach. So many storylines that we don't even need to get into that stuff anymore. I think we've all heard about it. But let's talk about the Bills and the Allen McDermott Buffalo Bills and where they stand right now and what it would mean to the franchise itself of getting past this big hump right now, John, and first off, get the team back to the AFC Championship game for the second time with these two.
I think they got to win. It doesn't mean they will never win if they do not win, but everything has aligned to where they should. The Chiefs are down. The Bills finally get them at home, something they've been clamoring about for years. We want to host home playoff games, and without outwardly saying it, but you kind of can feel it, the players, yes, it's about dang time that the Chiefs have to come here. It's about dang time Patrick Mahomes in general has to play a road playoff game, something he's never done before and will do for the first time here on Sunday in Orchard Park. Everything is there. And while the eye test for the totality of this season certainly would make you believe, okay, this isn't the best opportunity for the Bills to get past the Chiefs and to make a run at the Super Bowl, it is the best opportunity that they've had because, again, of all of these factors. And even though the eye test overall would say, hey, this isn't as good as the 21 team, this maybe isn't as good as the 20 team, or maybe even last year's team, they've weathered storms. They've gotten to this point, and to me, the Kansas City Chiefs have never been more vulnerable and gettable, and now is the time to take that kill shot at home.
And the Kansas City Chiefs, John, are still the reigning Super Bowl champs. So you do still have that, beating the reigning Super Bowl champs. Like you said, clamoring after each playoff loss out in Kansas City. Well, if they were here, it probably would have been different. I think the NFL fan base in general, the love affair with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs is starting to switch towards Patriots and Tom Brady-ish if you're outside of that particular fan base. So I think that hatred is around right now, building for the Chiefs, that I think just your average fan, if you go online, wants the Bills to knock Taylor Swift's boyfriend. I'm blanking on his name.
Travis Kelce.
Okay, I was going to say Chris Kelce. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid and his frozen mustache, just looking at Arrowhead Field every January is gotten annoying. So all that combined is huge for this team. And on top of all that, John, it almost feels like this is the AFC Championship. Like, I know that they'd have their hands full, but I think if they go and they beat the Chiefs and then have a tough game down at Baltimore or just lose to the Ravens, I just think the feeling would be different than if you lost to the Chiefs this weekend, because you shouldn't.
The belief, and I think rightfully so, would be this is maybe the bottom for the Chiefs. Could they get worse? Mahomes isn't going to get any worse. You can't imagine, Kelsey's going to continue to get older, but you can't imagine the cupboard of offensive weapons that can actually catch the ball will remain as bare as it seems to be right now, and they'll continue to work on the defense. But the driving force is Mahomes, and he's been let down more with the worst crop of weapons that he's probably had in his time with the Chiefs this season. So if you can't beat the worst version of the Chiefs in this run in your own backyard, then I think then you start saying, well, how and when can you? And that's what I think is at stake here on Sunday evening in Orchard Park is, again, the most vulnerable that this beast, this Goliath has been, and all the stars seem to have aligned. And if you can't get over the hump now, well, as the Bills, what could you do to be better prepared? And what would also then, if you're getting better from the Bills standpoint, what would need to happen for the Chiefs to not also get better? And so to me, that is what is on the line here. And I would also agree with you that, and I'd be more strong in this, they beat the Chiefs. There's still a high hurdle to clear to get to the Super Bowl. I think it would just change the talking point a little bit. At least it would be, all right, now you've beaten Kansas City 4 straight times, and you did one of them in the postseason. Now it's just, well, maybe the injuries got you, or maybe this, or maybe that. I think it's just a different conversation to rationalize not ultimately reaching the final goal. But if you fall short now, that also would be failing to reach the AFC Championship again after getting there in 2020, and it would be divisional. Right. You would now be exiting at the same time, and you'd be doing it now to the same team 3 times in 4 years.
And we'll transition to Sean McDermott here, but the team completing one of the greatest turnarounds, I would say, in franchise history. I mean, they get to the bye week, they're pretty much left for dead by a lot of people at 6-6. To get the 2 seed and to have this home field advantage, got to give credit where credit is due to Sean McDermott as head coach, because if you want to crap all over him when the team was struggling as the head coach, you got to give him credit for getting this team into this situation right now, John, where they're the home team in the divisional round, and they took care of the Chiefs during the regular season to start all of this. It was the Chiefs they took care of.
To me, what's on the line for Sean McDermott in this particular game is how he manages it. It was the AFC Championship game. He seemed to pucker up. He's kicking field goals when Kansas City jumps out on top. People are critical of that. We all know 13 seconds. Do not need to rehash that. But another ding at how McDermott handles high-pressure playoff situations. We kind of throw out, or I will say, the Cincinnati game. Cincinnati came out guns blazing. The Bills had no counter. You could say they ran out of gas. I don't even know if it was a coaching thing. I just think Cincinnati was better in that one. So here on Sunday evening, is McDermott aggressive enough? Does he make the right decisions? Does he manage the clock right? Does he waste timeouts? Does he challenge the right things that should be challenged, win or lose? So he challenged 2 things early in last weekend's game. I thought both were the right decisions, even if he didn't win both challenges. Does he make the right decisions? If the Bills win, maybe you gloss over whether any of that matters. If the Bills lose, what hand does McDermott have in that? Would you put it on a player mistake? Would you make it okay, he made the wrong call defensively and went all out like late in the Philly game that people were critical of them in that one? And, hey, why are you going 0 blitz when you know Jalen Hurts sees it and, boom, they lose the football game? How are McDermott's hands on the loss should that happen? To me, is the biggest thing in terms of directly on the Bills head coach and how the outcome ultimately comes on Sunday.
Do you think if the Bills don't win, McDermott starts approaching that reputation as one of those coaches that are good enough to get you to the playoffs during the regular season, but just isn't a good enough coach to get the job done completely and bring a Super Bowl to Buffalo?
As I said when we did the separate individual bye-week podcast focusing on McDermott's status and whether or not, and diving into the conversation of the validity of the hot seat and all of that, I said it then, I'll say it now. I don't care how this season ends. I mean, I care, but in terms of his security, it doesn't matter to me. But if they do not get it done this year, even if they beat the Chiefs and fall short in the AFC Championship game, I think next year and this coming offseason is when I think you could seriously entertain conversations of, is this the right guy? Or has Sean McDermott taken them to a point as far as they can go? And I would say you can entertain them even more so to what I just said in the last point. How do they fall short in this postseason run? And is it, again, maybe because of things that Sean McDermott directly impacted and decided? If it's some fluky play or whatever, because not winning does not mean that you failed in terms of what you did, preparation, all of that. You could always do something better. There's a lot of luck. Which team is the healthiest? That certainly is not the Bills right now. Mm-hmm. Which team gets a break? Which team gets a call that goes their way? There's all sorts of factors that help a team ultimately hoist the Lombardi Trophy, but there are also things that are within your control, and I think how that all plays out. But if Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills lose to the Chiefs, 100%, I'm willing to almost lead off any offseason conversation with, hey, this is the time Sean McDermott and this team has to finally at least make the Super Bowl, or else, yeah, what are we in the Marty? Schottenheimer is a name that's always thrown around with him.
Right.
Marvin Lewis.
That's the coach I was thinking of with the Bengals.
And that's more of a recent one of, okay, you took a bad franchise that was futile for almost 20 years,
right,
elevated them into perennial contenders, but you've now not even made it to the AFC Championship game more than once, and that's been 4 or 5 years removed. Again, that's also what I think is at stake here, is the leash can get a lot shorter if the Bills fall on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's where McDermott is right now. And, of course, you have Josh Allen, and he's in his prime right now, John. These are the years where a franchise in their franchise quarterback gets that win. You know, you look at, Patrick Mahomes. You look at when Ben Roethlisberger was in Pittsburgh. It was a few years in the playoffs. Then they got there. So now you look at Allen. You can go back to his first playoff game where he was kind of foolish towards the end of the game in Houston with the ball, made some bad decisions, grown up a lot, John. We've seen so far towards the end of the season and in the win over the Steelers, and them leaning on him, using his legs on the ground as well as his arm. I think at this time, with how this season went, Josh Allen is probably playing his best ball right now, and I think this is big going up against his arch enemy, Patrick Mahomes. They're also friends. We know that this is a rivalry, and I'm not the only one saying this. It's been said time and time again. This is the new Brady Manning in the AFC when it comes to postseason rivalries. Yeah, they play each other during the regular season, but Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning, 2-0 in the playoffs, the first 2 games they met. But then when the Colts finally got New England to their home field, Peyton Manning was able to beat Tom Brady. So it has that feel to it going into this one.
I'm looking at Peyton Manning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years it took him to win the Super Bowl. 9 years.
I did not know where you were going with that, but
he was 30 years old. 2006. He started in 98. And Tony Dungy came in 2002. So it was his 5th season with the Colts after kind of being maybe that McDermott conversation with the Buccaneers, who then obviously moved on from him, made the big swing for John Gruden, and won it in the first year, and that's what happened there. So this is where the patience thing, but I agree. It is the new age quarterback rivalry in the National Football League. It's not just because of the playoffs. It's because of their individual stature, and they've played 7 times now since 2020. So for a non-division opponent, you're getting them, and they're going to come to Orchard Park next season. So you're going to keep getting this, and you just assume if you're going to get through the playoffs, you're going to have to get through the Chiefs. That's just the reality of it. Or if the Bills can get past this, it'll be you're going to have to get past the Bills. But these two teams are always going to be in the mix as one of the playoff teams and one of the better contenders here. So to me, for Allen, he's not old, but he's not young anymore. He's in the prime of his career. He's in his late 20s. It's not do or die for him because, as I said, Manny was 30 when he won his first Super Bowl. But I think a lot of people look at the Bills' shortcomings in the postseason. They don't pin it on Allen because he's had good playoff success, obviously 13 seconds.
I think some of the Bengals game last year kind of fell on Allen.
I think it fell on everyone. But it wasn't like, hey, why did you lose this game? And I think, obviously, the 13 seconds insane performance by him also just elevates him to a different level here. So to me, it's he's beaten the Chiefs in the regular season. He's had good performances, or one, I should say, in a game they should have beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead the last time they met in the postseason. And early on, it was, okay, this is an elevating team. They're on the come up. Okay, you got spanked by the Chiefs, who are, the Super Bowl team in the AFC Championship game. Okay, but this is your coming out party. You're going to get there. Now they got to take that step forward. I do think we're not at the can Allen win the big game, can Allen take a team to the Super Bowl conversation yet. I think McDermott, is he the right guy? That conversation's like a full year ahead. But if we move forward here and it's Josh Allen plays a dud and he's at home and now they can't beat the Chiefs 3 times in the playoffs, then it's like, well, what does Josh Allen need to do? And again, if he goes out and throws for 300 and they lose in some weird way or the defense
throws
stinks.
3 interceptions, though.
But I don't think it's as vital of a moment for Josh Allen on Sunday as it is for certainly Sean McDermott.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. You look at Allen versus Mahomes, and just this year, John, it's amazing how close they are with everything. Even this year, touchdowns to interceptions are pretty close. I mean, you sit there and think, oh, my God, Josh Allen threw a ton of interceptions this year. Patrick Mahomes threw 14 to 27 touchdowns. McDermott. Allen, I think, off the top of my head, 29 and 19?
18. Isn't it on your paper?
Yeah, I wasn't looking at it. I'm trying to look at you. I'm trying to engage you. I don't sit here staring down all the time. Yes, I do have a cheat sheet right here.
He has a laptop, but it's literally not even on right now. This is a behind-the-scenes note. The screen is black, and Kevin is, instead of looking at the email he sent me, he's looking at a piece of paper in front of a blank computer screen.
I'm not going to turn.
I digress, but just so you know the dynamic here between the two of us.
I still use a pencil.
I like to write all my stuff out. I actually didn't have time to do notes this week. But Allen and Mahomes are the 2 best quarterbacks in football. I don't care about Brock Purdy. I don't care that Lamar Jackson's going to win MVP. Again, all props to Lamar Jackson, but I don't put him on the same level as Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. I don't think anybody else does. Jalen Hurts had a nice little boost last year. He came back down to earth, whether that's injuries or whatever it may be. And all these young guns that are supposed to be the next big thing, like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, no. Burrow's probably in that conversation, and it was probably a little detoured because of injuries this year. But it's Mahomes, it's Allen, and it's Burrow. And obviously with Burrow out, it's another showcase of these two. They've obviously played more than Burrow has with the other two. I love it. I mean, I lived the Brady Manning thing. You certainly did as a New England guy. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And it wasn't awesome as someone who didn't like the Patriots to always see Manning fall short. But it also just made it that much sweeter when he finally got over the hump.
Right, and that's the whole thing. Like, it's amazing how similar these paths are, because Manning's first two losses in the playoffs, one was in the AFC Championship, one was in the divisional round. That is exactly what has happened with Josh Allen going up against Patrick Mahomes. The third time they meet, for Peyton Manning, it's in Indianapolis. For Josh Allen, it's in Buffalo. So all of this going down as the two faces at the quarterback position in the league where we're at right now as opposed to the early 2000s, just so similar on that, John. And these quarterbacks, Allen and Mahomes, of course, doing it in different ways. When you look at wins since 2020, John, Mahomes with 50, Josh Allen right behind him with 48.
I mean, you could roll through the rest of them. I mean, they truly are the two best.
TDs since 2020. Allen, 174. Mahomes, 151. Allen with the edge. Passing, rushing since 2020. Mahomes, 20,454. Allen, 20,002. So the difference here, though, John, is, of course, it comes down to the bottom line. Patrick Mahomes wins 2 Super Bowls.
He's an MVP.
An MVP. Other than that, Allen, 2-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro for Mahomes. All that's even, but you ask anybody, the bottom line is winning championships, and Mahomes has been able to do it.
And what I think is unfair, this wins or a quarterback stat, I think when things are close, like Allen and Mahomes, that's fair. What you go as the deciding factor is who has been able to succeed the most with their team and lead their team in that capacity. And that's Patrick Mahomes. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He's an MVP. Those are levels that Allen hasn't reached yet, and frankly hasn't even come close to reaching.
Well, Allen on the cover of Madden himself, Mahomes was on it with Tom Brady.
Okay, cool. So it's that's the opportunity here because it would be Allen loses and Mahomes takes the worst group of offensive weapons he's ever had and still goes into his first road atmosphere in what I would consider, this is not biased, one of, if not the toughest environments an opposing player or team could ever go into, and that's Highmark Stadium, especially in the winter.
And that makes it additionally fun that this is Mahomes' first road playoff game, that it is in front of Bills Mafia. It is at a place that can get loud without it being a dome. It is a place where the passion just explodes out onto the field. I think Mahomes is going to be in for a bit of a shock. Like, I don't think you can estimate how loud it's going to be for him when he's out there.
I agree, and I was actually thinking of this today because it's certainly been a big talking point with the players, coaching staff, and whatnot over the past few days in Orchard Park of what is the importance and the magnitude of this game finally being in Orchard Park, finally being a Bills home game. We've heard things of certainly the noise, the crowd noise, and how that can affect mechanics and communication and things like that. Bills Mafia, Highmark Stadium, playoff time, cold weather, it's a different beast.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like Patrick Mahomes hasn't played in other challenging environments as well. Maybe not to a T what he's going to experience on Sunday night. But I'm not sure it's going to be this big swing in terms of that. Now, Deion Dawkins making it noted that it maybe just helps the Bills of we're in our routine. We're in our home. We don't have to make all these changes, even as something as simple as hopping on a plane, being in a hotel room, all of this stuff. No. We're in our home safe space, for lack of a better term. We'll see. It definitely gives an edge to the Bills. I would not say otherwise. I'm just maybe not as sold that it's going to be this massive factor because I don't think Arrowhead has played a huge swinging factor in all of the meetings the Bills have had to travel to face the Chiefs.
I'll agree with you on that, but maybe that first playoff appearance there, the AFC Championship game.
It was COVID.
No, it wasn't.
It was.
Not the AFC Championship game.
It was.
No, there's that picture of Stephon Diggs watching.
Right, it was the COVID game. They had some fans, but there were not a lot. It was not a full Arrowhead Stadium.
I'm picturing that Stephon Diggs picture in my head with a big crowd in the background, but
there were
you're
some
right.
fans.
I'm not denying you. It is what it is. That was the COVID year. For some reason, I just remember it differently. But I thought in one of those games they were talking about being affected on offense by the crowd, but maybe I'm thinking of
Pro
something
Football
else.
Reference says there was just under 17,000 in attendance for the AFC Championship game.
What do you know? Well, if I ever got to travel to cover the Bills,
it's
I would
almost
have
like
known that.
It's almost like one of us was at the game and the other was not. But hey, you keep looking at a blank laptop, weirdo.
Whatever. Okay, let's get to this game then, John, and we'll move on. We'll kind of just go through this quickly here, or we can take our time, whatever. Bills defense versus Patrick Mahomes. We got to get to the injuries, John, because they're just nonstop. I mean, it's been bad throughout the year. It's really bad right now going into the divisional round against a team like the Chiefs, and most of it is all on the defensive side of the ball.
I mean, these teams have played each other so many times that and this is why when we discussed how we wanted to do the show beforehand, it's like there are very few things that are different than the talking points we've had over the past couple of years. Tyreek Hill's gone. That's one that's different. Now we have the injuries. That's going to be the biggest one, and the Bills have dealt with injuries in this game in the past. So we're taping this on a Thursday, a day later now, so we have 2 days of practice, although Wednesday was a walkthrough. Christian Benford hasn't practiced this week. Terrell Bernard hasn't practiced this week. Taylor Rapp hasn't practiced this week, and Balin Spector hasn't practiced this week. That's just on the defensive side of things. Gabe Davis also does not look like he's going to be able to get out there. He has not practiced all of last week or this week as well. The positives, though. Tyrell Dodson back-to-back limited. Rasul Douglas back-to-back limited, and he has made it clear. I know he told Tim Graham of The Athletic after the game, and I spoke with him on Wednesday. He was adamant. I'm good to go. I was good to go to play last week. It was a coach's decision for me not to play. I'm good. No issue. Limited back-to-back. We've seen braces in the video that I've got at practice from Thursday. Shoulder brace for Dodson, knee brace for Douglas. So take that for what it is. To me, losing Terrell Bernard is huge. We discussed it on the postgame. I think it's maybe the biggest void. The positive, he's been considered day-to-day. I don't think he broke anything. So to me, he was dealing with an ankle. He's still dealing with an ankle. If the Bills should get past the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't know if he'd return for the AFC Championship game, but there's hope. And I think there's hope that he's not lost for the season. That doesn't mean he could play however long this run goes, but that's good. That wasn't like, nope, he's done, has to have surgery, in a cast, all of that. I don't think that's the case with Bernard. But if you get Dodson back, now you're not completely bare bones, because if you're missing Bernard, Dodson, and Balin Spector, now you're at A.J. Klein and Dorian Williams, a guy fresh off the street who's been in your system for a while, but was about to go on vacation. And then Dorian Williams, a guy you've yo-yoed in and out because he hasn't been prepared for the moment. If you can get Dodson in there, I'd be curious who would play the weak side, because I assume Dodson plays the middle, and then Klein or Dorian Williams plays on the outside there. That would be good, because you would feel at least there. And then Christian Benford's been solid, but I think you could trust Dane Jackson. And so if you can get Rasul Douglas in there, and it's Rasul Douglas, Dane Jackson, I think, okay, you're fine. Taylor Rapp, yeah, he's been your third safety. He comes in. I think you're fine if you have to put Cam Lewis there. The other one is Taron Johnson,
Yeah.
who's been limited in the concussion protocol, and he's probably be the next biggest one. Second team All-Pro. You know what you can use and how you could use him, whether that be with Travis Kelce coverage or even if Rashee Rice is ever put in the slot, whatever. That's big. So if you could somehow, if you're the Bills, with the three guys who've been limited in back-to-back days, get Douglas, Dodson, and Taron Johnson on the field, it's not your full, solid, we're good to go new group, but I think that is a group that can more than hold down the fort if you don't have everybody else.
If you said this Monday night after the game that would be the case, I think everyone would take that after what they saw unfold.
100%. Now, this is obviously the trickle-down effect. Okay, if Taron Johnson can't go, well then Cam Lewis is now your nickel, which then takes him out of the mix and you're down another safety then. So that means when you're doing 3 safety looks, if you don't have Taylor Rapp and you don't have Cam Lewis, you're probably bringing in Damar Hamlin.
Yep.
Do you want Damar Hamlin in there? There's a reason he's been inactive a lot this season. So now that's kind of the trickle-down effect that you're seeing here. And then, of course, the last one, just to round out the injuries, is Sam Martin. Encouraging sign, went from did not practice to elevated to limited on Thursday. Team bringing Matt Hawk back on the practice squad. I think you could take this down to the very last minute because Hawk, it's seamless, right? I mean, he does everything before Sam Martin got here.
You would have to do that. I would just say if there's any question in your mind about Sam Martin, you just have to pull the trigger and go with Hack. I think you just have
Hawk.
to. Yeah, Hawk. I just think in a game like this, you can't afford to. I mean, I've pulled hamstrings. You've pulled a hamstring. I would not risk that thing getting worse in the middle of the AFC divisional round.
He put it pretty good on one leg. I mean, we discussed afterwards, we know there's a difference of.
I wasn't at the game, but wasn't he in a lot of pain after he did that, though?
I don't know. He kicked it 45 yards. One could be so lucky to be in pain and perform that well. So that's where the injuries are. So it's not ideal. It's not potentially as dire. There is a path to where I think the Bills can be quote-unquote fine. The one interesting thing I asked Eric Washington on Thursday, defensive line coach, kind of the spokesman now for the defense, was through all of these injuries, how much have you as a staff had to alter what you want to do? And it could be a little coach speak because I don't think it's to the T, but he made it pretty clear they really haven't altered their game plans at all. They expect that if Cam Lewis has to play the slot for Taron Johnson, they can call the defense the same way. That if they have to put A.J. Klein and Dorian Williams at the linebackers, they can call it the same way as they did with Terrell Dodson and Terrell Bernard.
Yeah.
Things like that. Do I think that's 100% accurate? No. But I haven't noticed them make drastic changes. Now, would they necessarily stick with this, what they've done of, we're going to go 3 safeties in obvious passing situations if it has to be Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, and Damar Hamlin? I don't know. Well, that remains to be seen. But according to Eric Washington, they've operated for this entire season with a litany of injuries and plan on continuing to do so, of executing the game plan how they see fit, regardless of who's out there.
I want to bring this up because you did a feature story for the news on this, or a story on Von Miller, while we're talking about injuries and players and who's available and who's not. I think everyone's been rather disappointed with what we've seen from Von Miller since returning. We know a knee injury is not easy to come back. He's looked slow at times. He looks like he's not trying at times. But are we expected to see a different Von Miller for this divisional round game against the Chiefs?
Von Miller says he feels like he's back.
Okay.
And while Von Miller says a lot of things, and he's always incredibly positive,
Yeah.
so you kind of learn in just short order, almost 2 years now, that you take some things with a grain of salt. The tape and just the eye test, without diving into the tape,
Mm-hmm.
it showed you you're starting to see him a little more. I mean, he joked, I got to the quarterback. I just need to remember now how to tackle. and said that Mason Rudolph kind of did something funky with the ball where he thought he didn't have it, and that's kind of what threw him off to not get the sack that I think Ed Oliver ultimately got or something like that.
I think Ed Oliver got called for
a late
hit.
hit.
Late hit.
Correct, yes. But you're starting to see – you're just starting to see him, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's honestly where the conversation had –
I heard his name in the broadcast.
That's where we had been for so much of this return of Von Miller was, do you even know when he's on the field? And the answer to that, more times than not, has been no.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know he's out there. I'm like, am I looking for him? Did he do anything that would make me notice him? The answer has been no. But you noticed him at the very tail end of that Pittsburgh game. And whether you like it or not, this is where we're at with Von Miller. And you have to look that small for silver linings, for encouraging signs. And he said, listen, I thought I'd be good to go at the end of training camp. It's taken 4 months. He credits them sitting him for the one game. It's almost like a second bye week to get his body.
Mm-hmm.
And now Eric Washington is saying, I'm seeing him confidently switch from power to speed, to do an array of rush moves that we've seen in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at this point, that's all you can hope for. I mean, he's not being put in these prime situations and being expected to be Von Miller. The team's not doing that. They're rolling with Rousseau, Epinesa, Floyd, and Shaq Lawson sometimes. If Kingsley Jonathan's put up, those are their core guys. They're not asking Von Miller to say, hey, but they're also going to start putting him in these positions, maybe at critical, for sure, pass rushing moments. Say this is what we need, and maybe it was Pittsburgh. He kind of like punches Mason Rudolph in the head and can't tackle him. Maybe this is the week that he gets a knockdown of Patrick Mahomes, or even better, maybe gets a sack.
Closes out the game. Highmark Stadium erupts and goes nuts. We won't rehash stuff we did at the beginning of December about how the Chiefs' offense doesn't look great or top-notch. But, John, I've noticed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like, and you mentioned him earlier, Rashee Rice has kind of taken on a bigger role and has been visible. If we talk about players who are more visible to me, I've noticed him more as watched some of the Chiefs game leading into the playoffs in the game against the Dolphins.
So you just go back to late November, a few games before the Bills game, and first portion, 2/3 of his rookie season, he's seeing 5.2, 7, 5.4. That limited somewhat target share. Since they played the Raiders on November 26th, 10 targets, 9, 10, 9, 12, 6, and then in the postseason game last week, 12.
Mm-hmm.
And the production is coming along with it. So while you're looking at Justin Watson or Kadarius Toney or Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Sky Moore, Mecole Hardman, or all of these guys that just aren't cutting it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look for all of the things that have gone wrong with the pass catchers and the passing offense. Rice has done almost the opposite of what sometimes rookies do. Of they brought him along slowly, and now instead of hitting a rookie wall, they're increasing his load down the home stretch, and he's capitalizing. He's really good after the catch. He seems to be developing a rapport, and again, as the target share indicates, he's actually becoming more of a prominent guy that Mahomes is going to than Travis Kelce. And you could even say, oh, Travis Kelce doesn't look like Travis Kelce anymore. That doesn't mean Travis Kelce is someone you don't have to worry about.
Right.
But in terms of the most dynamic, challenging player I think that you might have to deal with, Rice seems to be the volume guy now, and Kelce is more of he's important. I mean, it's 7 for 71 on 10 targets in their playoff win last week. But Rashee Rice, he's not Tyreek Hill, but he's the 1B to Travis Kelce's 1A.
Yeah.
And that's kind of all. I'm not going to say all, but that's what you have to worry about here. Is Rashee Rice is the guy, make sure he doesn't blow the top off the defense, which the Bills you do a great job with, and then just try to keep Kelsey in check. But Kelsey's not he hasn't looked or produced like Travis Kelce. It appears after a hot start or in the middle there, he is finally starting to show that this guy isn't going to be the elite, unstoppable force forever.
Again, all this stuff points to this just being the right time, John. We go to the other side of the ball. Get Stephon Diggs going early, John. A bit of panic in the newsroom when the injury report came out and Stephon Diggs was on there. Veteran rest, what was it, foot? I don't think there's reason to panic in this situation.
No, I think it's honestly just what you have to do. Like if he's dealing with some sort of whatever it may be, then you have to put it on there. What's interesting is he hasn't had that foot listed. It's almost like a couple weeks ago when Josh had the finger.
Yeah.
And it's like, we just thought that he had a neck stinger. And then it's like, there's a finger. Maybe that's why he wasn't throwing it as well during the game, because he has a finger injury. A lot of talk while he was having that lull and snap counts and things like that was, is he healthy? He was never on the injury report. I'm not saying they were disclosing it or withholding that information, but I didn't see anything in the game against the Steelers that would indicate a foot injury. It wasn't on the Wednesday report. And so I don't know what happened. It was a walkthrough on Wednesday, so I don't really know how he would get a foot injury. We didn't hear from him today. So
could be anything. I mean, my dog jumped on the couch the other day and cut my big toe in half with its claw, and my big toe on my left foot, I can barely put pressure on it because it hurts so bad. So it could be anything.
It could, but I don't think it's anything to worry about here. When it comes just to the Bills and their plan of attack, it's the same conversation we've had. I don't care who the opponent is. Stephon Diggs needs to be number one, and then James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, I think are my 2 and 3. The interesting thing is Josh Allen said it this week, and Joe Brady agreed. Now teams actually appear on film that they have to account for Khalil Shakir. So now it's a fourth option, and we had this discussion a little bit after the game on Monday, excuse me. Okay, how does Joe Brady call the game that way? How does Josh Allen operate that way with now a fourth option? And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Wouldn't it be weird if this Gabe Davis injury is kind of led to the Bills? I love Gabe Davis. I think the Bills are much better with him out there. But sometimes in sports, when you're minus something that you've had, sometimes other people step up, and that's when you make your run.
Well,
it happens.
It's obviously different positions. I mean, Shakir's in the slot and Davis is in the outside. Davis rarely got targets. I never thought that his absence, to your point, I think he brings value in certain ways, but I didn't think it would disrupt their ability to be productive.
Right.
I just think Khalil Shakir has found his niche, and every time that Allen goes to him, he makes a play. And I think Allen is realizing that, and if it's there, maybe you start seeing him more willing to take chances Khalil Shakir's way. It's also, is Joe Brady going to put him out there to give him those opportunities? Khalil Shakir advancing and becoming more prominent and impactful, maybe you're right, Gabe Davis and the routes and things like that, even though they play inside-outside. Maybe you could equate it to even when Dawson Knox wasn't on the field. Look what happened to Dalton Kincaid. Maybe it just opens things up from a play caller and the trigger man of Allen to say, oh, look at how we could use them when down a certain player. And now you're just starting to see maybe where the Bills' offense is best suited to operate, and that's through those four guys, Diggs, Kincaid, James Cook, and now Khalil Shakir.
Yeah, and while we sit here and say the Chiefs' offense not as explosive as you picture them in your mind, the Chiefs' defense, John, has been really good this year. I mean, one could almost say the Chiefs' defense higher up than the offense in this one. I think, what did I have down here? The Chiefs' defense have given up second fewest points and yards on the season.
They're good. They're good. Chris Jones is a beast. We already knew that.
Yeah.
Ladarius Sneed has elevated himself to the conversation of one of the better corners in football. We saw him absolutely put Tyreek Hill in a body bag and jam him off the line. But we've seen Stephon Diggs go up against him. Trent McDuffie, you know what he is. He's an all-pro type guy that they'll send on blitzes, that he can go inside, he can go outside. Like, we know all of these things. That's why we knew the Chiefs' defense was good back when they faced them in early December. And the Bills, they kind of mucked down as the game went on, but they came out and moved it. And so, to me, that's where you kind of just know what both these teams are because they played earlier this year. They played in December, so it's not like it's this whole, we're two completely different teams. No, you're not. I don't want to hear it. You're not two completely different teams. Maybe the Bills are operating better offensively, and maybe they have less guys that you face because of injuries defensively, but the core of these teams are the same. And so we saw what the defense can do, and as long as, honestly, this is so cliche, if Allen can stay clean like he did against Pittsburgh, I think the Bills will win this football game.
Well, that takes us to BetMGM, John, and I'm going to ignore the weather because I think no matter how cold it is out, if it's not snowing, if it's not windy, I think both these offenses are going to be able to do whatever they want. So skip over that. Bills -2.5 at home against the Chiefs. I mean, I'm going to have the Bills kind of pull away in this one, so I'm kind of fine with that.
I'll take the Bills 2.5, and 45.5 is what you have the over-under. Let me do some math in my head. I'm going to say I'm going to take the under. I'm going to say Bills 24-17. They advanced to the AFC Championship game. My math would put that at 41.
All right. I think you and I are kind of in the same ballpark. I'm going to say Bills get to 28 or 27, and the Chiefs will be at 14, I'm going to say. I think the Bills get that extra score a little bit later on in the game like they did against Pittsburgh to give themselves a little extra breathing room.
Saying 28-14.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're asking me to do the math. That would mean you're taking the under.
I actually wasn't. I was getting to it.
Oh, okay.
But whatever makes you feel better. You look like you're in prison with that shirt on, by the way.
You can't steal someone else's joke.
Well, no, it just popped into my head that reminds me of the movie with Sean Penn called Bad Boys back in the day where he gets sent to prison, and that was the same color shirt. But, yeah, we'll give Scott Swenson at Channel 4 credit for saying it before me. But it did just pop into my head, John. So that's what we got for the final score. The big news everyone else wants to know is Taylor Swift coming to this game in Buffalo, when she'll arrive if she is, and what the reception would be.
Well, I think some stupid fans will probably throw snowballs at her.
She'll be inside.
At her suite or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool. If she goes to other road games, why would she not come to this one? It's a playoff game. Unless she has an engagement or a concert or something, which I don't think she does. I think this would be good for Buffalo. If she doesn't come, it'd be so what? She doesn't come to Buffalo, but she'll go to all of these other cities? So I want her to come. I think it would be super cool. And it's like the battle of musical girlfriends between Josh Allen and Travis Kelce.
Maybe they'll be in the same suite together, hanging out.
Haley Steinfeld. I don't know what her vibe is with Taylor Swift.
I think I saw something on Twitter that Steinfeld started a snowball fight towards the end of the Bills game against the Steelers.
I don't know.
Good grief, man. Yeah, I don't know how you wouldn't want Swift here. I would think the only reason why is because of the reputation, the fact that it hasn't stopped snowing here for a week, and all that other stuff.
I mean, she was there in that pretty cool-looking jacket thing that Kyle Juszczyk's wife made for all of the wives of the Chiefs, and it was legit sub-zero temperatures, and she was at Arrowhead. It'll be better than that on Sunday.
I think she went to Green Bay, too. If you follow the NFL, I'm sure you've heard of this by now. A reporter down in Tampa Bay asked Todd Bowles how the Buccaneers are going to handle the cold temperatures, I'm paraphrasing here, up in Detroit. How he handled the reporter's question, John, my kicking off point is this, is way better than how I handled it a few years ago when we were on Facebook Live and my wife asked me how the Bills are going to handle the weather in Detroit and what the forecast will be. And I just said back to her on air, they play in a dome. Everyone knows it. That's a bad question. Find something else. That was my response to my wife. I was not talked to when I got home later on that night because I did it while we were doing this. So I think Todd Bowles handled it a lot better than I would have, and probably a lot better than other coaches in NFL history.
Good for him for not making that reporter feel like an idiot, because I'm sure they certainly did. The backstory appears, I don't know this for sure, but I saw someone put out there that it was a news reporter who doesn't, well, presumably, clearly, doesn't know sports well enough, and it was because the station that she works for has gotten rid of all their sports people, which is commonplace in this new age of our industry. And to still cover the team in the playoffs, they sent a news reporter who wasn't as knowledgeable. I don't think that simply should give them a pass. I often hear, well, I don't know sports, and as if that should be acceptance of not just looking things up and you get a pass for not being able to, quote unquote, do your job. Like if you're asked to do something, if I'm asked to go to a news story, I can't use the excuse if I screw something up in the news story because I'm a sports guy. No, like you have to educate yourself. So I think it's more of an indictment on our industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Than this, oh, let's give her a free pass because she apparently does not cover sports. Well, that's fine. Like, look it up.
I can't help but think of someone back in their newsroom that does know sports, gave her a list of questions, and snuck that in there to be a jerk.
Why would? Well, you would think that. I
would think that.
I don't think that at all. I think the weather has been such an incredible talking point for so many of these games. Last week, Buffalo, obviously, Kansas City, obviously. It's cold. It's wintry. There's this storm. I just felt like that was probably top of mind, and for whatever reason, she wanted to ask that. Again, props to Todd Bowles for handling it. Not props to our industry for not properly putting people in positions to succeed and for just assuming and asking people to do any and every job because you don't want to pay them more money.
Yeah, it's a great trend. But I digress, John. Speaking of the industry, happy 10-year anniversary here at this company, closing in on my 23. But here we go, John. You've been here 10 years. I remember when you arrived.
You thought I was fat.
I thought you were fat because of the suit that you were wearing. And I was training for the Boston Marathon back then and in a lot better shape. So how the turntables have turned. But a lot has happened since you arrived. I was the one out there covering the Bills for years, never went to a playoff game, never went to even an important game at the end of the season. By the end of the season, I was usually requesting the games off so I didn't have to go cover the team.
You actually did get to go to London, though. They did that back then.
Yes, we did do London back then. I did get to go to London, and I got to go to Jacksonville for the first playoff game, now that I think about it, which was one of the most boring games ever.
It was horrible.
But you've seen a lot since you've been here. It's pretty amazing.
I put this on my Instagram. I didn't want to ruin the moment on Twitter. Like 3 months in, I'm like, get me the hell out of here. It's like, get me out of here. It was not a good fit to start, but I'm very glad that I stuck it out. Somehow they've kept me around this long. Probably past
you
their
had
better.
to make up your own position to stay here.
I didn't make it up. I did not. Our former boss, Ed Bataccio, came to me before the 2017 Bills season and said, hey, what would you think of if you were like a Bills beat reporter? And I'm like, great. That would be really cool. And then I just developed the position to what it is today, and where I just cover the team exclusively. I was doing some reflecting, though, last night after I posted it on Twitter, because honestly, I forgot about it. And the top moments, I will never in my life forget being outside the locker room in Miami when the Bills broke the playoff drought. I mean, it was all of us media members hovered around Joe Biscaglia's phone he was not with the Athletic at that time, and it was on delay. And so you're waiting for this fourth down play, and you hear this incredible roar from inside the locker room, and you're like, oh my gosh, they must have just got a first down. And then you watch it on this delay, and Tyler Boyd scores a touchdown. You could hear the concourse with that video that's so viral of all the Bills fans who stayed to watch the game there. Insane. I mean, it was insane. And then to your point, the next week was one of the worst football games I've ever seen in my life. And then years later, I saw another almost terrible football game, worst of my life in Jacksonville. Let's just never go back there.
Right.
Prior to my only Bills days, the UB men and women's basketball team in 2016 both won the MAC tournament in Cleveland. Same day, the women were earlier than the men, essentially on buzzer beaters. So this was before UB had really hit that run. This was Nate Oates and Felicia Leggett-Jack. Stephanie Reed hit the one for the women, Blake Hamilton for the men. And I'm like, this is incredible. I'm in here the whole day, and 2 game winners to go to the NCAA tournament. That was great. And then a couple months in, early on in 2014, Buffalo hosts the NCAA tournament. My alma mater, the Dayton Flyers, get slotted to play Ohio State, my father's alma mater, in the first round. Dayton wins. I'm like, this is sweet. They're facing Syracuse. They beat Syracuse, which, listen, I'm sorry if you're a Syracuse person. My wife is. She almost never – it's amazing I got married because the first conversation we ever had was how Dayton beat Syracuse. And – oh, it was so good. I'll never forget the director in my ear before our live shot after the game was, wow, that was a big bummer. And I literally go, not for me. I'm a Dayton alum. And they're like, oh. I'm like, so those are probably my top 3 moments. But covering the Bills has been great. I mean, it's been cool, and we've grown the product, you and I, with Andy Young's help and others. I want to give Greg Vorse and Ted Goldberg as well of our post-game show Elevation, the Buffalo End Zone post-game show, this podcast here. So 10 years. Who the heck knows how long this is going to go, my run. But I can't believe it's been 10 years, Kevin, and we've never fought once.
That's right. Jon and I always get along completely, and weren't even yelling at each other on my rundown leading up to this, my headlines before every podcast, my description before everything's just so smooth here.
I mean, I didn't even tell people that you wrote, is Tyler Swift coming?
I looked down and saw that, and I was like, I'm just going to crumple this up. Who knows what's ahead, Jon? 10-year anniversary, then maybe a Super Bowl. We know this much. We'll be back coming up on Sunday with the Buffalo End Zone postgame show with Fred Jackson after the game with the Chiefs. And then I guess we'll take it from there. We'll be back, win or lose, with another podcast next week talking about the season and what lies ahead. But hopefully we're talking about an AFC championship game and maybe even one at Highmark Stadium. You never know how it's going to play out. For Jon Scott, I'm Kevin Carroll. Thanks for joining us, everyone.